All right, so the Buffalo Bills made the decision to pay Ed Oliver, the former, top 10 pick by Buffalo. Let's talk about the decision and what it means for Buffalo moving forward. This is the contract. It states Ed Oliver signed a 4-year, $68 million contract with the Buffalo Bills, including $45 million guaranteed and an average annual salary of $17 million. In 2023, Oliver will earn a base salary of $10.7 million while carrying a cap hit of $10.7 million. Unfortunately, we don't know more details than that as of right now, because sometimes, listen, you see $45 million guaranteed, but sometimes a lot of that is guaranteed and, only factors into the first 2 years, and so the next 2 years are kind of like you could cut him easily. Sometimes it's the other way. Sometimes, a backloaded contract means that you're actually kind of guaranteed to get more money, because if the later years have more guaranteed money attached to those, then it means that if you get cut, then you still get more money. So it can be a little bit complicated there. But basically, $17 million a year for 4 years for the 25-year-old Ed Oliver, which, at face value, feels like a bit of an overpay, I think is probably fair to say. I think that's probably how most people viewed it. You look at his Pro Football Focus page, and it's not anything that you would look at and say, listen, he's a good player, but definitely $17 million. Is he that good of a player? Not a massive overpay, but feels like it's a bit of an overpay. I think that's reasonable to suggest. Then you look at, again, across the board, several things to note here before we move on and get into film and all that stuff. First, the overall defensive grade did take a bit of a dip from 2021 to 2022, but not massively. Kind of been floating around 70s the past couple of years, which is, again, that's a good player. The pass rush is definitely where he thrives. He's been a better pass rusher than run defender in, actually only 2 out of the 4 seasons, but pretty significantly in those 2 seasons, whereas the other 2, he barely was a better run defender than pass rusher in those seasons. So definitely, he's a pass rusher. That's kind of what he does, but he hasn't been disastrous in the run defense area either. The other last thing I want to mention before we move on is the total snaps. You see he's, been over 600 snaps. I guess I should say over 584 snaps each season he's been in the league, but he's never had an over 700 snap season. So he's always been kind of around right there, give or take 50 snaps, right around 650. That's where he's kind of been at for his entire career. A lot of that is, I do think that in certain obvious run situations, he gets taken off the field. He is not someone who just is a pure 3-down defensive tackle, which again, you could argue, do you want to pay big money to a guy who isn't a pure 3-down player? But we'll get more into that in a second. Also, let's go over here. This is his Pro Football Focus grades in college, and you see really good stuff at the college level. I mean, I remember I was convinced Ed Oliver was going to be a good player. I really was. I believe I was still during the draft working at the deli at the time before, as my channel, I was making videos, but it was, I hadn't fully taken off yet, wasn't able to do it full time quite yet. But yeah, I thought for sure Ed Oliver was going to be fantastic, and I should mention that historically, I think sometimes people think, oh, well, let me just buy low on a player who had great draft capital but hasn't yet lived up to it just yet, because maybe we can unlock something. The issue is teams actually more often than not overpay those players as opposed to underpay those players. People do take draft pedigree into account when handing out contracts, which can result in some issues and can result in some overpays. But at the same time, it also can result in some guys who are just late bloomers. Again, he's 25. He's not that old. Maybe he could still get to become the guy we thought he could be. Again, and that's not to say he's a bad player now, just maybe hasn't lived up to the hype quite yet. But going over to the film, there's some good plays from Ed Oliver. There really is. Definitely he's shown the flashes, and this is going to be an example of one of those flashes in the run defense game. It's not just in pass rush. We're going up one-on-one against a right guard here. Right when this play begins, I think one of the things that it's worth mentioning with Ed Oliver is, he's kind of that similar mold that we see some of these other guys come in, of these sort of undersized but very athletic interior defensive linemen. I do wonder if he has the hands that some of those other guys do. I mean, again, he doesn't have the hands that I see an Aaron Donald have. Obviously, no one can be Aaron Donald. I get it, but that is something worth mentioning probably. but he's so athletic that when he does get the hand placement, like right now, he has the hand placement, he has that right arm where he wants it to be, watch what he's going to do. As you see, he is able to get off very quickly, get over, and help make that tackle. These are the kind of things he is capable of, is he can be a very effective player. Like I said, he's a good football player. He is. He might not be, a superstar just yet, but he is a good player. Well, let's go over to this play where you're going to say, okay, yeah, sure, he'll make some good plays, but what about when he gets double teamed out of the way? And it's fair. He will get double teamed out of the way at times. On this play, it's going to be the left tackle and the left guard who are going to be double teaming him. Eventually, the tackle will get up to block a linebacker at the next level. That's the way this play is designed to work. And as you see, I mean, it works pretty well. Like, they do get Ed Oliver out of the way significantly, but not massively, I guess I would say. There's still a way for Ed Oliver to try to come back and make this play. And as you see, Ed Oliver comes back and is able to make that play. Just a really good play from Ed Oliver to after he got kind of blocked out of the way a little bit, which is going to happen. Again, he's a very specific player, and we could sit here and say that it's a big negative that he only plays 700 snaps a year instead of 1,000 snaps a year. Well, first off, not that many players play 1,000 snaps a year. I mean, again, part of the snap count is also, it's worth mentioning, that is including playoffs a lot of those years. So, that factors in. So it's probably a little bit less than how you would typically associate 700 snaps a season. That's fair to say. But also, no, that's understandable. Put players in positions to succeed. Very few guys can do everything. And if you're someone who adds value, but on specific snaps, you just be out there, well, then get someone else who's fresh in to do that stuff, and then you'll be more fresh and add more value when you do the other stuff. So I think that's all reasonable to say. And going over here, let's talk about what he can, how he can still get his wins in the pass rush. We haven't talked about the pass rush at all, despite the fact that I said he's a better pass rusher than he is a run defender. But watch what's going to happen on this play as he's going up one-on-one against a left guard for Detroit. And right when this play begins, I mean, it's not like he has great hand placement or anything. This is really just going to be power. Watch him completely overpower and be able to get to Jared Goff for the sack right there. So, yeah, there's good stuff that Oliver is capable of. There's no denying it. I also think it's fair to say he hasn't exactly been a superstar with the Bills. He hasn't necessarily lived up to the hype so far. But again, there is time. He is still a young player who, should still be getting better at this point in his career. And listen, I do have to say as well, spending $17 million for a good player is not the worst contract in the world, especially when you're trying to win a Super Bowl right now. For whatever reason, people lose their minds when it comes to paying interior defensive linemen. I feel like every year there's guys who aren't even good getting double-digit millions of dollars yearly. People just go crazy over getting a good interior defensive lineman. They feel like they have to get good guys to the point where they'll hand out double-digit millions of dollars to players who aren't even good. So at least you're paying a guy who's good, which I think is, promising. So again, is it the right move? Is it an overpay? I'll let you be the judge. I can see both perspectives on it, but I do get why the Bills decided to make this move. So I'll phrase it that way. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.